Welcome everyone to this webinar about options for Americans who are interested in moving to Portugal or Spain. My name is Sofia Hassander and I'm Global Immigration Counsel at Grossman Young Hammond, an immigration law firm based in the Washington, D.C. area. In my role, I help our clients navigate outbound immigration to other countries, and a big part of that work is collaborating with trusted immigration colleagues in those countries. So we partner closely with foreign counsel, like our speakers today, to connect clients with the right expertise and to coordinate the process from start to finish. So joining us today are Ana Garciano Sole. She's the partner and managing director at Sagardoy Legal and Expat in Spain. And we also have Edna Moraes and Gustavo Borges Oliveira, associates from Prada Poço Samiranda and Associados in Portugal. So thank you so much for joining me today. We only have so much time and we have a lot to talk about, so I'm going to dive straight into the presentation and start with the first question. So the purpose of today's webinar is to explore options for Americans who are interested in moving to Portugal or Spain who don't have a close family member or an employer to sponsor them for the immigration. At Grossman Young Hammond, we've seen a significant increase this year in Americans who are exploring relocation opportunities in Europe, with Portugal and Spain being some of the top destinations that our clients are interested in. Could you each provide a high-level overview of the main options available for Americans who don't have family connections or a job offer in either of your countries? Anna, do you want to get started?
Sure. Great. Well, thank you very much for counting with the firm for this webinar. Happy to collaborate on the explanation about the different options that American nationals have in Spain to obtain a visa when they are not sponsored either by family members or by employers. And I will highlight probably 5 visa categories. It would be the student visa, non-lucrative residency visa, digital nomad visa, freelancer visa, and entrepreneur visa. Just very briefly, we must take into consideration that the student visa is not a residency visa, but a long-term stay visa, and it allows to follow an academic program in Spain, but not to work unless this academic program is considered as a higher education program. In this case, the student visa will allow to work up to 30 hours per week. But as I said, this is not a residency visa, but a long-term stay visa. And as a stay visa, it will not be taken into consideration in order to apply for long-term residency permit in Spain or for the Spanish passport. Then we have the non-lucrative residency visa. This type of visa will allow its holder to reside in Spain, but not to work in Spain. Okay, even remotely for a company located abroad. The non-lucrative residency visa is not valid for any professional activity in the country, despite where is located the client or the employer. Then we also have the digital nomad visa. It is a residency visa too, and it applies to, in the case of freelancers, for freelancers who will be working remotely from Spain for clients located abroad. But we have here a little flexibility, and the digital nomad freelancer can work up to 20% of his or her time for clients located in Spain. Then we have the freelancer residency visa, allowing its holder to work as freelancer in Spain for clients located in Spain or abroad. And we also have the entrepreneur visa, allowing to conduct an entrepreneurial project in Spain of general interest for the country. So as a general rule, entrepreneurs are freelancers. It's not needed to have an employer sponsoring the application, but applicant must prove that the business project is of entrepreneurial nature through a very specific report from a Spanish authority, and that the project will be of general interest for Spain. These visas allow dependents, except the freelancer visa, to obtain permits with same validity as the principal's visa. Okay, and when it is about the digital nomad dependents and entrepreneur dependents, dependents are authorized to work. So these are the 5 categories that in general term should be reviewed for American nationals willing to come to Spain without the sponsor of employers or family dependents.
Great. Edna, would you like to go next? Or?
Of course. Well, first of all, let me thank you, Sofia, for the introduction. I'd also would like to thank to Grossman Young and Hammond on behalf of PRA for the invitation to be here today. Jumping on about the question made, yes, there are also behind family reunification or employment rules, there are several alternative pathways that are admissible options as well as quite attractive, like in Spain, depending on the profile of the applicants, okay? Please allow me to add that although all of them are called visas, they are all residence and ways for you to obtain the residency in Portugal. In practice, we usually distinguish 2 main groups of applicants, and these are also the ones we will discuss today. So first of all, let's look to the ones that intend to live in Portugal on a more permanent basis. In these cases, we usually work with the D7 category, as they are usually known, which includes residence permits based, for example, and I will mention at least 4 or 5, where we are talking about the own income visa, retirement income, remote work, where we talk directly of the digital nomads. We also have the student visa, among others, of course. And then we have a different type of applicants. And in this case, I'm referring to the ones that don't want to live in Portugal, at least immediately or permanently, but who still want to secure a plan B for the future. And for that purpose, we have available investment route option, which we called Golden Visa, and grants residence, but without the requirement of actually residing in Portugal. Although if you want, you can do it. So there are nothing on the law that prevents you from residing in Portugal. In both cases, whether we are talking about the D7 visa routes, the D visa routes, actually, I'm sorry, or through the Golden Visa, the residence grants, any residence actually grants the right to move freely within the Schengen area, which is often one of the most valuable aspects of obtaining Portuguese residence. As well as all of the options I'm mentioning, they can be extendable to the family members. So you are always allowed to have one applicant, the main applicant, and then to include family members.
Excellent. So I know a lot of people are interested, especially in investment options. So let's talk a little bit more about that. We have seen recently that the European Union is tightening the rules around these so-called golden visas in recent years. And there was even a court case in this past April that found that parts of Malta's golden visa program was illegal under the European Union rules. Could you give us an update on where things stand with investment programs in Portugal and Spain, respectively? Are they still viable options for Americans? And if so, what kinds of investments qualify? And what are the typical amounts? We'll start with you again, Anna.
Well, I'm afraid I don't have good news. From the Spanish perspective, the Spanish government canceled the Golden Visa program April this year and since April 4th, if I remember well, it's not possible any longer to submit any new golden visa application. But golden visa, we mean investor visa application. The rule is very strict, even for newborn babies from investor permit holders. They cannot obtain a visa, golden visa, as a dependent. However, the holders of golden visas can keep renewing the visas as long as conditions that led to the approval are maintained. This is a serious issue for third country nationals because the key benefit of the golden visa was that it allowed to reside and to work in the country, but it was not mandatory under this visa category to reside a minimum number of days per year in the country, as Edna was sharing before for Portugal. And now, as a general rule, all the third country nationals obtaining a residency permit in the country must make sure that they do spend more than 6 months in the country per year, because obviously there are some exceptions, because if they don't, their visas might not be renewed. Also, this golden visa in Spain, as I was saying, because we have very similar immigration and nationality programs in Portugal and Spain, was a very good plan B for foreign nationals who wanted to spend more than 90 days at any 180-day period in the Schengen area, mainly in Spain, but without being considered Spanish tax residents. So now we have this tricky point where our clients, American clients, want to have a residency permit in Spain, but they know that if they don't spend more than 6 months per year in the country, there is a risk of non-renewal this permit. And if they stay more than 183 days per year in the country, they might be considered as tax residents. So we have lost a very good visa category for our American clients.
Gustavo, did you want to?
No, I think Edna goes
Edna
first, and then I complete.
Yes, I will go first. Yes, and then I will make here the bridge to Gustavo. In Portugal is completely different. As Anna mentioned, in Portugal, the golden visa is still a possibility and, of course, an opportunity. It is a fact that, like in many European Union countries, the program has gone through several amendments over the years. I cannot tell you that the program is today as it was in last 10 years. So right now it's completely different. One of the biggest changes and the most well-known categories until now was the real estate investments, but also since November 2023 is no longer available. So right now we still have plenty of other options. And it's important to clarify that the other investment modalities that we will approach were not newly created and only appear because of the end of the real estate opportunity. They have always existed within the golden visa framework. The difference now is that with the real estate no longer a valid modality, as I was mentioned, these alternative modalities have gained more visibility. For example, I will mention 3 of them, okay, which right now are the most known and also the ones that are looking for investments. Well, first of all, we can talk about the investments in Portuguese companies, either by incorporating a company or injecting share capital into an existing one. In these cases, we are talking about a minimum investment as share capital of 500,000 euros, combined with the creation of some jobs. Second option we have is related with cultural investment, with a contribution of 250,000 euros to support cultural projects or asset production in Portugal. And the last one, we are talking about the investment funds, with a minimum subscription of 500,000 euros. And this has become one of the most popular alternatives, which right now, Gustavo, yes, will explain you better.
Thank you, Edna. First of all, thank you, Sofia. Thank you for Grossman Young for the invitation. I'm really glad to be here. And as my colleague Edna was saying, I will give you a more detailed approach on the investment funds option for the golden visa criteria. So first of all, as Edna already mentioned, the minimum amount that the investor needs to invest into the fund will be the 500,000 euros, and not all funds are eligible for this golden visa criteria. The fund must meet a few criteria that have been defined by the Portuguese government, and in any case, the investor must maintain the investment for at least 5 years in a row. So by the time you acquire the participation units of the fund, you cannot sell them until you get the maturity date of the fund, which will be, in this case, the 5 years. Another topic that it is relevant is that a fund to be considered eligible for the golden visa option must meet the requirement of 60% of the fund investment to be invested in Portuguese companies. That can be through debt instruments like obligation funds and sort of debt instrument that companies can issue, or through investment in equity products like shares and the social capital of companies. So the Portuguese government does not certify all funds that are eligible for golden visa, but that's up to the managing entity to issue a statement saying that for that specific reason, our fund, the managing entity fund, will be eligible for the golden visa. That's it.
Excellent. Another topic that we get a lot of questions about is residency through passive income. Could you each outline the key requirements for Portugal's passive income visa and Spain's non-lucrative residence permit? I think common questions that we get are what's the minimum monthly income needed for these types of residency? And what kind of evidence do applicants typically need to show that they have this passive income? And also, if you could, it would be great to hear what types of passive income that you usually see in this category, pensions, investment income, etc., and whether different income sources are treated differently by the immigration authorities in this context.
Sure. Sofia, well, first of all, before going through the amount required, allow me to share key requisites that are applicable to any type of residency permit or visa in Spain. When I mention visa, I mean also permit. Okay, like Portugal, the visa will be stamped on the passport if applicable, but it will include the residency permit that then once in Spain will be documented with a foreigner identification card. So regarding the general requisites to obtain a residency visa or permit in Spain are not being under an irregular status in Spain, not having signed a non-return agreement, not having criminal records in the countries where the applicant has resided during the previous 5 years, not suffering any of the illnesses stated in the International Sanitary Regulation dated on 2005. That's it. The non-lucrative residency permit, as I mentioned before, allows its holder to reside in Spain initially 1 year without going through any professional activity. So applicant must prove that he or she and his or family will have enough incomes while in Spain to reside without a need of working. Minimum amount currently is per the applicant, one applicant, 33,600 euro plus 2,400 per each dependent. And the source of this amount can come from investments, savings, pensions, and the consulates admit any type of evidence to support the availability of this financial incomes. So if it is as a general rule, what we do provide is a certificate from the bank, duly stamped, confirming current balance and average balance during the 12 months prior to the submission of the application, together with the bank statements from the previous 12 months. Some consulates are more flexible than others, and they just require bank certificate with 3 months of bank statements. But you can prove tax return, or you can provide tax return, you can provide any document confirming the source of the incomes. Okay, obviously certificates confirming pensions are very valid evidence. Even, and it's not always evident, donations documented from public documents and included on the tax return might be accepted. But as a general rule, bank certificates and bank statements are good enough. Regarding this visa category, very important, initially it's granted for 1 year, and then provided conditions that led to the approval are maintained, it can be extended for periods of 2 years each, and after 5 years, if the holder has been residing in Spain during 5 years legally and continuous, it is possible to submit a long-term residency permit. But very important, for the renewal, the new regulation which came into force last May specifies that it is mandatory that the applicant has resided in Spain at least during 183 days per natural year. So it is very likely that if the applicant, the renewal applicant, has not stayed during these 183 days in Spain, the renewal application would be rejected.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Edna, do you want to talk about
Yes,
Portugal?
of course. Well, after all, we are very similar to Spain. Well, in terms of passive income, yes, we called it's usually known as B7. Most of you, I'm sure you already heard these words. And similar to what Anna mentioned, it covers various types of passive income. We can talk, for example, of rental income from properties owned abroad, not in Portugal, but abroad, investment income, including dividends, interests, or returns from financial assets. And we can also approach the retirement or pension income. And we can talk about private pensions or government and public pensions, of course. How can we show it? We can show it based on, for example, if we are talking about a rental income, we would always have to present lease agreement, rent receipts. If we are talking about retirement or pension income, we need to provide the documents attesting that we are talking about the pension and the monthly transfer. In terms of the amount of the income and how it works. Well, first of all, the key requirements is that this income must be established, regular, and sufficient to support the applicant and their family while living in Portugal. For a single applicant, the minimum monthly income required is equivalent to the minimum wage in Portugal. So we are talking about 870 euros. Of course, that according with the number of family members that we are discussing, this amount will increase for sure. For example, if we are talking about a couple, then we need to have 870 euros for the applicant, and for the spouse, 435 euros. So this is going to be how much is essential to assure, to provide evidence to the Portuguese government that all the means of sufficiency are compliant. One of the requirements besides this part to apply for a visa in Portugal, the D7 as well as any other, is essential to have a Portuguese tax number, which we call it NIF. It's identical in US to your social security number, and to open a Portuguese bank account, which are also essential to demonstrate means of sufficiency in Portugal. The process of obtaining this visa, passive income, always needs to start in the US, most specifically in the Portuguese consulate of your area of residence, and after the issuance of the visa, which is stamped on the passport, valid for 4 months, you will have to travel to Portugal, where you will have an appointment or an interview, as we call it, at the Immigration Service in Portugal to formalize the residence request. It's important to notice also that this visa requires you to live permanently in Portugal. So you need to spend most of the time in Portugal, and later I will explain you exactly how long you need to stay here. The residence card that is going to be issued is valid for 2 years, renewable for equal periods of 2 years. And as soon as you achieve the 5 years, you are allowed to apply or for the permanent residence or for the Portuguese citizenship.
Excellent. So for Americans who are not coming just to enjoy the sun, but they actually want to continue to work, I want to talk a little bit more about business visas or working remotely from either Portugal or Spain, for example, as a freelancer. I understand from our previous conversation that there are a few different options. Often these are called entrepreneur or digital nomad visas. You know,
Yes.
okay.
You're
Go
right,
ahead, Anna.
Sofia. Yes, absolutely. In Spain, we have like 3 different type of visas in this scenario. We have first the one linked to digital nomads, so international teleworkers that will like to work for their clients remotely from telematic means from Spain for the clients located abroad. Okay? So this will be the digital nomad visa or permit. As I said, it will allow initially to work just for clients located abroad, but 20% of the time can be invested in clients located in Spain. Key requisites, a part of the general ones I just mentioned when talking about the non-lucrative residency visa, are being a qualified worker, have been working on the business for the 3 months prior to the submission of the application, and that the clients or the corporation for which the freelancer is working has been on the business for at least 1 year. Okay, this visa can be applied for at the consulate, at the Spanish consulate having jurisdiction in the applicant's place of residency, and will be resolved. Statutory processing time is 10 working days and will be granted with a maximum validity of 1 year. If the international teleworker, the digital nomad, is in Spain under regular status like visitor, he or she can apply through the in-country process, and a statutory processing time to resolve the application would be 20 working days. Okay? And this residency permit, not the visa granted at the consulate, but this residency permit will be granted with a maximum validity of 3 years. And it can be extended as long as conditions that led to the approval are maintained. Digital nomad permit is a great option, but it is important to understand that a part of meeting immigration requisites, social security and tax regulation must be respected. So if the digital nomad is not covered by a social security agreement between the home country and Spain, because this agreement does not cover freelancers, it is key that the freelancer is registered in the Spanish social security system before starting the activity. This is very important. And the freelancers, the digital nomads, should stay in Spain more than 6 months per year, because if they don't, the digital nomad permits might not be extended. This is for the people wanted to keep working as freelancer for clients or for their own company in Spain. Then we have the entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are people who would like to develop a business project in Spain of innovative nature with general interest for Spain. Is not requested a specific amount regarding investment. But this project must be declared as entrepreneurial by ENISA. And if not, the application will not be viable. Again, processing time is 20 working days for the permit, 10 working days for the visa, and it is possible to skip the visa step processes if the application is submitted while the applicant is in Spain under a regular status, even as visitor. Then we also have the freelancer work and residency permit. This permit will be valid for professionals that would like to start their own activity in Spain. A minimum investment is not required, but they must prove that they have a feasible business plan and they have enough financial resources to conduct this business plan and to maintain themselves in Spain while they are in the country. Initial permit is granted with 1 year validity, and it can be extended as long as conditions that led to the approval are maintained. Renewed permits are approved for 5 years and allow not only to work as freelancer but also as dependent employee. These permits applications must be submitted at the Spanish consulate having jurisdiction in the applicant's place of residency. Statutory processing. The consulate will send the application package internally to the immigration office in Spain, and statutory processing time to resolve the permit application would be 3 months. And once the application is approved, the consulate will issue the visa. Applicant can collect the visa, come to Spain, and start working. However, even processing time is 3 months. In cities like in Madrid, the process can take up to 10 months, okay, because the consulate sends the application to Madrid or to Barcelona, where the applicant is intended to conduct the activity, and the immigration office will not last 3 months, but perhaps 6 or 7 months. Regarding these 3 visas categories, it is important to highlight, as I said at the very beginning, that dependents of digital nomads, entrepreneurs, are authorized to work and can come at the same time as the principal with visa or permit with same validity as the principal visa or permit, while freelancers are not authorized to process the visa for dependents until they have been residing in Spain at least 1 year. So this is an important difference between these visa categories. And always when obtaining a permit in Spain, allowing to work, it is very important to fulfill Social Security regulation, because when applying for the renewal, authorities are going to check that applicant has no debts with Social Security and tax office. So we are not going to talk about taxes, but it's also very important to assume that when staying in Spain more than 183 days, the third country national is going to become a Spanish tax resident. And it is very important from the very beginning to understand how tax rules, tax regulation work in United States and in Spain, and how the double tax treaty signed between both countries applies. But as a general rule, American nationals are never going to be taxed twice, because the taxes paid in one country are going to be waived as tax credit in the other country.
Excellent. Can you also mention if there's are there any industries that the Spanish immigration authorities look more favorably or less favorably in this context? I know in some countries they're hesitant, especially about like the real estate or restaurant industry or.
Not really, not really. I mean, when it is about digital nomad visa, it's about to prove that you have been working during the 3 previous months, that you are a qualified worker, that the work can be conducted really remotely from Spain, that you will be receiving at least twice minimum salary in Spain while you are working here, which at the end of the day is similar amount that the one required for the non-lucrative residency visa, but it's not because of a particular industry. When it is about entrepreneurial permit, is about innovation. So we can think it might be linked to IT, about IA, but there is not a specific regulation for any particular industries. And for the freelancer, it might be even a tea shop, I mean, or a coach. So it's not that linked to to a specific industry.
Excellent. Edna, do you want to talk about Portugal?
First, so let's start with the digital nomads. We always have these and numbers, so digital nomads is called D8. Okay. What this means? This means that we are talking about individuals who work remotely as employee or as a freelancer, and they are allowed by the company or by the person they work to perform their professional activities from Portugal. The applicants must demonstrate that they already conserve this professional relationship for at least 4 months before applying for the digital nomad visa, and needs to demonstrate a minimum monthly salary or income according with the specific situation of 3,500 euros per month. Similar to what I already mentioned, this amount may increase or not, taking into account that the salary is already considerable, but may increase according with the family members. In the D8, as well as in the entrepreneur visa that I will also explain later, you can also apply for the family members at the same time you apply for you as the main applicants. Important to know, and on the other hand, let's talk a little bit about the entrepreneur visa. Entrepreneur visa is called as D2. As I told you, always these and numbers, but D2 is entrepreneur. This option requires the incorporation of a company in Portugal that brings value to the Portuguese economy. The company should have a business purpose that needs to be innovation, culturally or economically significant, and an access, of course, to the Portuguese economy. So it can only not be a regular company or present a regular business plan. It needs to be a little bit more than that, as needs to create an innovation and or culturally or economically significant. It's still important to provide evidence of the business plan with a perspective between the next 5 to 10 years in order to the Portuguese entities and there's Portuguese government authorities to understand exactly how this type of company will work and will perform their duties in Portugal. In conclusion, and talking a little bit about these two visas, choosing the right option depends a lot on the application goals, on the perspective, and of course, the desired level of involvement in Portugal. But it's also important to mention that all of these opportunities of visas of these that you can apply in Portugal, all of them allow you to work in Portugal if you wish. Of course, the digital nomad is a little bit different because requires you to have an employer or to have a company to where you perform service abroad, but all the other allow you to work in Portugal if you wish and allow you to open a Portuguese company. So sometimes it's better to understand the markets in Portugal, how the Portuguese deal with companies and to understand a little bit how the Portuguese thinks before opening a company, but it's possible to have a company with a different type of residence that it's not the D2 visa. Also, the D2 allow you to apply for your family at the same time that you apply for your visa. All the residents also, once again, they will be valid for 2 years, renewable for equal periods of 2 years.
Excellent. You mentioned you can be on another visa and start a company in Portugal. Does that include a student visa? Can you come as a student and start a company?
It's a possibility, yes. In terms of the students, all the process is completely different. It's possible to be a student in Portugal and also to work. But of course, we need to talk about a part-time job because it cannot be a conflict in terms of the classes. Because in Portugal, if you have a student visa, which will be valid for the time of the course, if we have a course of 1 year, is valid for 1. If we have a course of 2, will be valid for 2, okay? But at the time of the renewal, if you fail the course, then your entire right to reside in Portugal is going to be jeopardized, okay? So it's a possibility to open a company, but it's not at all advisable, taking into account the conflict between study and work at the same time, especially when you need to assure that you have a structured plan and a business at the same time you conclude a study.
That makes sense. So for the next question, I wanted to turn to more practical considerations. If you could tell us a little bit about how long a process typically take from start to finish, and if there are any specific requirements that tend to be surprising or harder to meet for applicants, or any other common challenges that you can talk about.
Shall I go first?
Yeah, go ahead, Anna.
Always, please.
Okay. Well, let's review the 5 categories we have been discussing for the student visa. If the application is submitted at the consulate, processing time will be 7 days for the immigration office to send the report to the consulate and 1 month to resolve the visa application. If we follow the in-country process, this is while the applicant, the student, is in Spain under legal status. This in-country process is available just for applicants of legal age and for students who will be following higher education programs. Statutory processing time will be 2 months. Okay. Then, non-lucrative residency visa, statutory processing time is 3 months. As a general rule, in 1 month, 1 month and a half, the applications are resolved. Then, digital nomads, 10 working days for the visa, 20 working days for the permit. Entrepreneurs, same statutory processing time, 10 working days for the visa, 20 working days for the permit. In both cases, entrepreneurs and digital nomads, it is possible to skip the consular step if the application is submitted while the applicant is in Spain under legal status, even as visitor. And for the freelancer visa, statutory processing time for the immigration office resolve the application is 3 months. But as mentioned, in cities when the applicant is intending to conduct the activity in big cities like Barcelona or Madrid, it might take several months, up to 8 months. In general terms, when submitting an application in Spain, it is key to understand that all foreign official documents must be provided duly apostilled in the case of countries having signed the Hague Convention or legalized through diplomatic avenue, and that certificate as criminal records and marriage certificate, as a general rule, have 3 months validity since the moment the document is issued. Also, that all the documents must be provided duly translated to Spanish by an official translator authorized by the Spanish Foreign Affairs Ministry. I guess these are the key practical points to be taken into consideration. Also, because we face this issue with American clients. When we request for Spain apostille documents, we don't mean that you go with an old birth certificate to the public notary. You do a copy and you apostille this copy. The apostille must be provided in new issued original documents as a general rule, because we see people sending us FBI records, notarized, and then apostille, and no, the apostille must be stamped on the FBI report. Also very important, talking about criminal records. Spain, when it is about American applicants, it just accepts in terms of criminal records certificate, FBI certificates, okay? Not certificates from each state based on a fingerprint request.
Those are good ones. Do you have any caps in Spain? The number we said, because that's something we have here in the United States. There are only a certain number available each fiscal year.
We don't have quotas for this type of permits. We don't have quotas. We have quotas for very specific processes when people come to work to specific industries and they do not receive a specific job offer, but employers organizations request, let's say to Morocco, 5,000 people to collect strawberries. So in this case, there is a specific number of available permits, but we don't have lottery system for visas, and we don't have this quota system, and definitely not for the permit and visas categories that we have been talking about.
Excellent. Edna, what's the deal in Portugal?
Well, we have also a lot of good things, but one of the bad, let's say, that we also require all the documentation needs to be apostille, and the apostille needs to happen in US, and similar to what Anna explained in Spain, in Portugal you also need to apply for fresh FBI criminal records and all marriage and birth certificates, if it's the case. Allow me to add that in terms of criminal records in Portugal, it's only acceptable FBI criminal records, and you cannot have any associate crime that has a penalty in Portugal of more than 1 year, okay? This is to the criminal record that happens in US, and also in Portugal, although you don't need to ask it directly, the authorities will always check it, and the criteria is the same. I know that most of you didn't live in Portugal yet, but still they are obligated to make this type of verifications. And this is applicable to each type of residence in Portugal, D visas and golden visa. Right now, let me focus a little bit on the D type, because in terms of timings, it's completely different than the golden visa. The D type, after you applied for the visa at the US consulate, at the Portuguese consulate in US, that is like that, then they have 60 days to issue a decision regarding the visa approval. So between the moment you initiate the process until your residence card being granted and you receive it, we are talking about a process that takes around 6 to 8 months. Please note that this already includes the moment where you apply. You already applied at the Portuguese consulate. The consulate issued the visa. You came to Portugal, have the appointment with the immigration service, and then you will receive your residence card. And as I mentioned at the beginning, the D type requires you permanently to live in Portugal, which means that your physical presence in Portugal is obligatory. So it's not expected by the Portuguese government that you be away from Portugal for more than 6 consecutive months, or 8 non-consecutive months with the validity of your residence card. And as I mentioned, the residence card, the first one, is valid for 2 years, and all the others is going to be renewed for periods of 3 years. Briefly, what you need to do is spend around 16 months or 18 months, according if we are talking about a consecutive or non-consecutive periods of absence in Portugal. From the golden visa perspective, as I mentioned at the beginning, the one that has the biggest amount of investments and that you need to formalize the investments. Well, the golden visa in terms of procedures is completely different. All the process is taken care directly in Portugal. You don't need to be physically here. We are the ones as lawyers that will submit the process. But in terms of how long the process takes, we are talking a huge difference. So from the moment you applied until you receive your residence card, right now the golden visa is taking around 2 years to 3 years. It's a huge delay, it's a fact. This is due to the pending process that the Immigration Service in Portugal has. And our hope is that this period of time is going to be less, because we know that they are making a lot of efforts to try to become better. But so far, it's taking around 2 to 3 years until you obtain the residence. Let me add that this is also applicable to your family members, because on the moment we submit the main applicant's golden visa, we can also submit the family members. But differently, in the case of the golden visa, the requirement of being in Portugal is much lighter. Well, applicants only need to spend in Portugal at least 7 days per year. All of this is applicable to family members also, as I was mentioning, including the periods of stay in Portugal.
That's all. We're gonna move on to the last question. I wanted to look ahead to the long term for those who start out on one of these visa options that we discussed today, and then they realize that they would like to make Spain or Portugal their permanent home. We've touched on this already a little bit, especially for permanent residency, but if you could talk a little bit more about the road to permanent residency and ultimately EU citizenship, and if there are any language or integration requirements to get there.
Sure. In terms of long-term residency permit, the applicant, as a general rule, must prove she has been residing legally and continuously in Spain during at least the 5 years prior to the submission of the application. So the long-term residency permit allows its holder to reside and work in Spain under the same conditions as Spanish nationals. Regarding continuity, there are specific rules about the time that the applicant can have spent out of the country. And once you obtain the long-term residency permit, it is quite automatically to obtain the renewal. Very important, we have two types of long-term residency permits. National version, it's about in general rules to prove that you have been residing this time in Spain, this period in Spain, but we also have the EU long-term residency permit. To obtain it, you must prove also that you have been residing in Spain, and the time spent in other EU countries must be added to the time spent in Spain under very specific conditions. And you must prove that you are financially reliable and you have public or a private medical coverage in Spain. The main benefit of the EU long-term residency permit is that when going to another EU member state, you can switch this EU long-term residency permit for a national permit in the destination country. But it is very important to understand that you still must apply for this permit in the new member state. It's not something like that operates automatically. This is very important because when our clients listen about the blue card, EU long-term residency permit, they think it's a permit valid to work in other member states, and it's not. The right to reside in each member state is granted by the specific member state. The EU as an institution cannot grant the right to reside in different member states. This is regarding the long-term residency permit, but it is also important to review, as you mentioned, Sofia, the Spanish nationality application. As a general rule, USA nationals can apply for the Spanish passport after 10 years of legal and continuous residency in Spain prior to the submission of the application. Language test, as well as Spanish language test, as well as Spanish culture test are required. By legal, we mean under valid residency or visa permit. Time spent under student permit is not going to be taken into consideration because, as we said before, student permit is long stay permit, not residency permit. And in terms of continuity, according to current applicable criteria, the continuity of the residency is not interrupted for stays out of the country not longer than 90 consecutive days. So you can hold a residency permit, stay out of the country 80 days, come back for a week, go abroad again, back and forth, and you still would be considered that your residency has been continuous in terms of applying for the Spanish passport. But careful, because different rules apply in terms of maintaining the right to reside in Spain under non-lucrative residency visa, under entrepreneur visa. So the rules for continuous residency are different for tax, immigration, and nationality purposes. I know we are talking about American applicants, but some of these Americans can perhaps have a second passport. And in Spain, foreign nationals from Ibero-American countries can apply for the Spanish passport after 2 years of legal residency in Spain. So if you hold both USA passport and Mexican passport, please try to apply for the permit, for the residency permit, through the Mexican passport. But even if you apply through the American passport, then you can claim that you are Mexican by origin and reduce the 10 years of legal and continuous residency required to 2 years as Ibero-American national from origin. There are other rules that might minimize the time requested to apply for the Spanish nationality, like have a parent or grandparent originally from Spain, being married to a Spanish national with whom you have resided 1 year in Spain. So there are different rules, and obviously this must be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. But these are the general key rules.
Excellent. Edna, what are the rules for citizenship in Portugal?
Well, for the citizenship, right now, the rule is that you can apply for the Portuguese citizenship after achieving 5 years of legal residence. And legal residence, we mean from the moment your residence card is granted. Mm-hmm. This is the right now period, let's call it. But it's also important to mention that there are a proposal at the Parliament right now to be under analysis that they want to increase the periods to apply for the Portuguese citizenship from 5 years to 10 years. Okay, this is still not a reality. Please me allow you to mention that it's only a proposal, but if you are considering, it's important that you be aware of the current situation. And if the increase arises, as well as the 5 years, this is applicable to all citizens. The intention is not to have a criteria based on the citizenship or anything like that. Okay. I also would like to mention that you can apply for the Portuguese citizenship, but you still have other available routes, which namely two of them. One of them is to apply for the permanent residence. Once again, you can apply after you achieve the 5 years of legal residence in Portugal. And difference of what happened with the citizenship, even if the citizenship increased, the intention of the government is not to increase the time of to apply for the permanent residence. The difference between a permanent residence and the temporary one is the validity, because the permanent is valid for 5 years and the temporary, until you achieve the 5 years, is always valid for 3 years. For the citizenship and for the permanent residence, you need also to comply with the Portuguese language requirements, which is the basic, as we call it, level A2 of Portuguese, okay? And similar to what Anne already mentioned, for the permanent residence and also for any type of residence in Portugal, you at the time of the renewal, you will always have to provide evidence and to assure that you keep the permanent stay in Portugal. Because if you don't comply with that, you will may jeopardize the right to keep your residence in Portugal, as well as you always need to assure that you have means of sufficient to support yourself and your family, if it's the case, as well as you need to assure an accommodation to be in Portugal.
I believe our time is up, and that was the end of my questions. So thank you to all of you so much for sharing your insights today. This has been a really informative discussion, I believe. We've covered a lot of ground, from investment and passive income options to remote work, entrepreneurship, and even long-term residency and citizenship in Spain and Portugal. And I think it's clear that both countries do have a lot to offer Americans who are thinking about relocating. So thank you again to our panelists for your time and expertise, and also to
Thank you
everyone
so
who
much.
joined us today.
Yes, Sofia.
We hope that this session serves as a useful starting point for anyone who's exploring relocation, and you can always contact us if you have any more questions.